Welcome into the Horse Racing Show. I'm Kenny Rice, and this is episode number 26. Wow, it's like a half a year we've been going with this thing. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for liking us and subscribing to us on YouTube. And for those that really like the show, please get your friends who really like the show to do as well, because that's important as terms of positioning on YouTube, I've been told. Because I got a lot of friends that tell me, I listen to the show. Do you subscribe to it? No. So please do that. That helps us out. And then also you can listen to us on iTunes, Google Play, as well as go to our Facebook page, which is the Horse Racing Show, and like us as well. Because all this like is very important, apparently. We want people to like us. That's how you move up in the world these days, is have somebody like us, which is really interesting in the world of horse racing, because horse racing is not, and maybe the only sport out there that is not motivated, generated by likes and Twitter followers. Most of the great trainers, like Bob Baffert, he has a Twitter account. He doesn't even tweet. We've got a great trainer joining us today, Todd Pletcher, who finally doesn't have an individual account, but his racing stable does. And they got like 2,000 followers or something. If he were an NBA player, he'd have 2 million and something. But they don't need it because the horse racing people know who they are. And I guess a lot of rich people don't tweet. They just go find them and they subscribe that way. Hey, I got a horse, I've got money, do you want to train it? And they'll say yes, and that's the way it works. But please do, if you like us on YouTube, please also subscribe to us on YouTube. They tell me it's a really easy process. They tell me a lot of things. They being Scott Hall, Ben Chaffins, and Mr. Thomas Kenny. They tell me these things, so I trust them.
Thanks, Kenny. We trust you too.
That's the way it works, though, isn't it, Scott?
That's right.
That's the way it works these days. It's also socially media-driven. And we're doing a podcast, so we won't be hypocritical. We're trying to be socially media-driven as well.
Right. Yeah, and it's cool because when you subscribe, it's nothing that bugs you. What's awesome about that is if we ever do anything live like we did, at the Preakness, it'll alert them, hey, it's on. So it's pretty innovative.
Okay. We have a special guest in today. Your friend from Los Angeles is in.
That's right. Got the godfather of my kids in.
That would be?
Tim Wasberg.
Hi, Tim. Welcome in.
Hey, thank you for having me, Kenny.
All the way from Los Angeles, California. I've been there a few times.
I know you have. I've seen you there.
Boy, there's nobody tweeting in Los Angeles, is there?
Oh, no.
Nah, they don't do that stuff out there.
Pretty quiet
Big dead zone.
Big dead zone. But thank you again for all those that are listening and that subscribe to us and download it in 1,500 countries and all throughout the U.S. And we appreciate the feedback. And you can give us feedback. You can send us tweets to Horse Racing Show or to Facebook. And if you have any questions, any observations, throw it in there. I mentioned Todd Pletcher is going to be on the show today. Probably the trainer of his generation right now is Todd Pletcher. And then Terry Finley, who is the master of putting together a syndication. Wayne Lukas was a guest a couple of weeks ago, the legendary trainer, and he talked about the biggest change he's noticed in 30 years of horse racing is syndication. Because at one time it was about the individual farm or an individual that had a lot of money. Those generally were the ones winning the big race. Of course, that was a half a century ago, or maybe a little less. There's been some since then that have had individual ownership. But if you look at outside of the Zayat, Ahmed Zayat, of course, owned American Pharaoh by himself. And so that was one of the real standout horses in the last 20 years, owned by an individual. But syndication is kind of like the NBA. Remember back in the day, Bill Russell didn't call up K.C. Jones and John Havlicek and get them to play for the Celtics. It was through draft choices and trades. Babe Ruth wasn't calling Lou Gehrig to come and play on the 27 Yankees. That didn't happen back then. Nowadays, and LeBron James started this. It's about, I'm going to get all my buddies together. We're going to create these super teams, as he did with Miami when he wanted Chris Bosh to come down and play with Dwayne Wade. Kawhi Leonard just now is signing with the L.A. Clippers, but he also wanted Paul George to make that happen. So they brought him in. And that's the way it works now. And, of course, LeBron is out there in Los Angeles, and the Lakers were terrible, weren't they, Tim? Terrible this past year. And so he brought in, he got Anthony Davis to come in from New Orleans now to play. So that's what it's about, is getting that together. And that's what syndication has been about, basically, is a lot of people can own a piece of a horse, and you don't have to spend millions of dollars to do so, and that is attractive, certainly to businessmen, but to every average folk out there that likes to do this. And Thomas, we were looking at some of the syndication things, and like Nashua was syndicated, the first $1 million syndication in 1955.
Mm-hmm. You know, it was a horse originally owned by a single farm. I believe it was Bel Air. But the owner of Bel Air Farms died, and their estate basically auctioned off all of their horses.
Yeah.
And so a syndicate bought them for, I believe you have the number there in front of you?
It is $1,251,000, which was the first $1 million syndication. That was 1955 when $1 million was worth something. That was a big deal back then. And then, of course, one of the more famous syndicated horses, and you may have gotten this if you just saw the movie, if you weren't around or too young to remember, The Great Secretariat, was in 1973 when Claiborne Farms syndicated him. Mm-hmm. And that was a big deal. That was a big deal.
Yeah. I actually found, when I was researching, I found an article from the New York Times in 1973 that basically broke down what was going on. That gave us a number too.
And that was $6.08 million for that. Like $190,000 a share. And Mrs. Tweedy got some of that. She got it like her own separate part of the deal.
I believe she kept 4 shares.
Yeah, Penny
out of
Chenery.
32.
Penny Tweedy, as she was known then, kept 4 shares. And that was huge for Claiborne Farm and for a boy wonder named Seth Hancock at that time. He was a mere kid. He was in his early 20s. He had taken over the farm from his legendary father, Bull Hancock, and Seth put that together for Claiborne Farm, and that was a gigantic syndication deal. So Terry Finley, who is the president and CEO of Point Thoroughbreds, is going to join us, and right now he is the largest in the world in thoroughbred partnership groups. And we'll talk about how he goes from a West Point Army Ranger to becoming the guy that's put together all these syndicates. I remember when Cott Campbell, the late Cott Campbell, had Dogwood Stable down in Aiken, South Carolina. And I first met Cott in the early 80s at a Keeneland horse sale. And he was sort of a pioneer in that. There were other syndicated groups going on about that time, but he was the one that especially started including, we'll say, the everyman, which basically is all the guys in this studio. Would you say, guys?
Oh, yeah.
Guys like us that could say, okay, you got a couple thousand you want to put in, and I guess his clients, and I think Terry's, we'll get the figure on it when we talk to him. Some guys put in $2,000, $3,000. Some guys are putting in $100,000, and it depends. He divides them up. He's got, I'd say in the ballpark, like 60, 70 horses or so now, which started out with one horse, by the way, in 1991. He had one guy and one horse in 1991. See, you got to start somewhere. It's like trying to get in shape, trying to start reading more, trying to start whatever you're trying to do. Eventually, it goes back to the root of it just started. One person did something. I lost 2 pounds today. I lost 1 pound today. Now I've lost 25 or 30 pounds. I'm going to read books this summer for a change. I read half of a book. I read 3 chapters. Now look, I'm up to reading 3 books. It's whatever you want to do. So we'll talk about that as well. And we'll talk about syndication because you might be wanting to buy into a horse, Thomas.
It's possible. It's almost like stocks, really.
Yeah, it is. And the only way to do that is to keep up with stocks, is you got to keep up with the horses. Gosh, exactly. How many people have lost money? What always fascinates me, the number of millionaires, very smart people who made millions and millions of dollars in businesses, starting up their own business or investing or however, make it on Wall Street, however they made it, and then lose millions and millions of dollars in the horse business because they didn't really, they got excited about it. Oh, I'm in the horse business. Oh, I got a big horse now. Oh, look how much money I paid. And then down the road, they just didn't keep checks on, how much money they were spending, or maybe they didn't make the right call with the trainer. They got the wrong trainer at that time, or maybe they just said, instead of saying, hey, this horse is not going to make it. Maybe we need to sell this horse or come up with another strategy. They were just headstrong. No, I will not give up on my horse. This horse stinks on ice, but we're going to keep running him. And, that is fascinating how many people have lost money in that. Unlike the movie business, Scott, that you were in for so many years, you and Tim, and guys just rolled in money back then. Nobody ever made a bad movie.
Oh, yeah, never. But some people, I think, it's not like us, but they have that money and they just kind of want the experience, and maybe they really don't care.
Well, yeah. I think they don't. And then some, really did care when all of a sudden he goes, hey, man, that's like $20 million. That's almost like real money. Even rich people would say, hey, $20 million is a lot of money I just blew.
Yeah.
That'd be like a big night out for you. That'd be a big weekend for Thomas Kenny out on the town.
Heck
Yeah, a whole lot more than that.
And you could build your own games. You wouldn't have to worry about playing games. You just have your own game. You'd have people come over and actually be the people in the game. You could hire people to actually be the pawns, your knights, your bishops, however you do that.
Human chess?
Human chess, yeah.
Sign me up.
But until that day comes, which will be when something freezes over, we'll continue on with this little thing we call the horse racing show. And coming up next, one of the great trainers, Todd Pletcher, will join us from Saratoga, New York. Stay with us and keep subscribing to the horse racing show.
It's free.
It's free. Free, my favorite word. Welcome back to the Horse Racing Show. Thanks for watching and subscribing on YouTube, for listening to us on iTunes and also on Google Play. Here's how good this guy is. A couple of years ago, he was at a function to help raise money for disabled jockeys. I was going to introduce him, and I went over to Todd Pletcher, and I said, what year were you inducted in the Hall of Fame? I should know this stuff, but I just assumed it. And he hasn't been in the Hall of Fame yet because he's been so good, so fast, so young that he hasn't got his 25 years in, which is a qualification for a trainer to be up for Hall of Fame election. I will predict this. In a couple more years, when he is ready for Hall of Fame election, first ballot guaranteed. And Todd Pletcher joins us from Saratoga now. Todd, thanks for being on.
My pleasure, Kenny.
Well, you have done a lot in a short period of time. Do you ever look back and go, wow, this has been a pretty quick ride and a fun ride, I hope, for you along the way?
Well, we've been very fortunate, and it's been a lot of fun. It definitely has. The one thing about this business, sometimes you don't have time to really sit back and reflect on things. So, every once in a while you try to look at some old photos or trophies or what have you, and just kind of appreciate how blessed we've been to train some really, really good horses over the years.
Now, 95, I believe you take your license out and you get your first winner in 96. Is that right, long and through there, the time frame?
Yeah, I started actually December, I want to say the first week in December, took some horses on my own at Hialeah. And then we had, I think, our first runner in January at Gulfstream, maybe, and then first winner in February at Gulfstream. So, we were fortunate. We only had 7 horses when we started, but they were all horses that had their conditions left, and I think we were able to win at least one race with all 7 of those, and that kind of got us going.
And I certainly don't want to paint the picture like this is some overnight sensation, like you say, from this is when he started 23, 24 years ago. But actually, you started about age 7, I think I read. Or you told me, with your dad, Jake, who's in the business, and you were walking hots for him at that time, right? You were like 6, 7 years old. You were a kid.
Yeah, I went, I'd go out to the barn with my dad, on weekends or, anytime that I could. And, I think when you're young like that and you're just you're learning things about the business and you don't even realize that you are learning. But, he was always good to have me do some sort of chores, whether it was, mixing feed or walking a horse that was pretty calm, and just, let me get a feel for it at an early age.
Well, it's a good dad not to give you the rambunctious horse.
Yeah. He waited until I was 8 or 9 for that.
That's the one that was dragging you around the barn.
That's right.
Was there something you pick up that you look at now and you go, wow, my dad, I remember that, and that's what I still do to this day, 40-some years later, that I was doing when I was a boy?
Yeah, in a lot of ways, the business has changed, and yet, the basics are still very much the same as they were back then. And I think one of the things that you learn as a trainer when you're, working for another trainer is a lot of the principles are found out through trial and error. So, a lot of these experienced guys that you learn from do things a certain way because over the years they've learned it from someone else who, went through the trials and errors of figuring out a system. So, I think the one thing that I really enjoyed as a child, and one of the things that, my dad both of my parents were very helpful in trying to put me on the right path. But one of the things that I really enjoyed was going around to the sales, the yearling sales with my dad. And, at an early age, he was teaching me about conformation, and certainly those things, still apply today. A good looking horse and a correct horse are the same now as they were back in the 70s.
And you can kind of spot the athlete in a horse, can't you? I mean, you can see it as once you've been around. This horse looks like an athlete, just like if you watched a guy come out on a football field. Some guys just look like they're football players.
Absolutely, and it's you can learn a lot just by studying a horse's conformation and watching a horse walk, and at a young age like that, like you said, the athletes stand out as such. And sometimes if you just try to keep it as simple as that, without overthinking it, you can hopefully find some of the right ones.
Talking with a great trainer, Todd Pletcher, 3 Belmont wins, 2 Kentucky Derbies, 9 Breeders' Cups, 7 times the Eclipse Award for Outstanding Trainer. And all this in less than 25 years in the business as the head trainer. During that time, you were going to University of Arizona, I believe, maybe like your sophomore, junior year. You go to work for a guy named Wayne Lukas in the summer. What was that like when you first meet Wayne Lukas?
Well, my dad and Wayne trained quarter horses at the same time. So my dad had been friendly with him for a while. And one of the things that I wanted to do, and my dad advised me, my parents advised me, if you want to train horses, they were adamant that I get a college degree, but they also felt like during the summers, instead of just working for my dad, to work for some other trainers. So I spent one summer at Arlington Park grooming horses for Wayne, and then I spent another summer grooming horses for Henry Marino, and I spent another summer grooming horses for Charlie Whittingham. So, those are just invaluable experiences, and you learn so much from the way subtle things that each trainer does a little bit differently. And so it was a great foundation. But really what it did for me was it gave me that introduction to Wayne, and gave me the opportunity when I did graduate from college to be fortunate enough to land a job with Wayne, and ended up going in 1989 to Belmont Park to work for Wayne and his son Jeff, who Jeff was really a key part of Wayne's organization, and really a brilliant horse person, and a great coach and great teacher. He was a stern taskmaster, and you had to make sure you were on your game. So he was a great person to learn from.
And, one of the tragedies there, I'm glad you mentioned Jeff. I don't want people to ever forget him. It was got run over by a Tabasco cat, people probably know, had sustained brain injury and all, and died much too young later on. Was never the same. But, I remember meeting Jeff early on too, and he might have been the equal of his old man. I don't know, but he certainly had the makings of that. And I know you had a great friendship with him.
I did, and it's a tragic loss. I think without a doubt, Jeff would have gone on to be an extremely successful horse trainer on his own when that time came. And he was such a big part of the Lukas organization during their very, very best years. But he was also influential to so many of us, like Dallas Stewart and Mark Hennig and Karen McLaughlin. We all spent as much time, or in some cases even more, working with Jeff than Wayne. So, they were a great team and great people to learn from.
You mentioned Karen and Dallas and Mark, and I think some of you got together, what was it, 5-6 Belmonts ago, had like a little reunion. I think Angel Cordero came by, and it was kind of to honor Wayne. I don't know what was the milestone. I can't remember that, but I remember you were telling me it was quite an interesting dinner party I imagine you guys had.
It was great. Yeah, it was a lot of fun to have all those guys. And as you can imagine, just with Wayne and Angel Cordero alone, there wasn't much room for anyone else to tell stories, but we had a great time, and it was great to kind of have a reunion of sorts.
Wayne said, we had him on the show a couple of weeks ago or so, Todd, and he, singing your praises, and he mentioned that he just saw that you were one of those guys that were going to make it. He saw that in you. When did you kind of feel like, I'm ready to go on my own, and I think I'll do pretty well in this business, when you decide to leave as the assistant to Wayne to go out on your own in 95?
To be honest with you, it was a very intimidating situation at that time. Wayne had such a deep and strong stable, and we were winning Breeders' Cups and Triple Crown races, and that that particular year we had Thunder Gulch, who won the Derby and the Belmont, and Timber Country won the Preakness, and Thunder Gulch won the Travers, and so it was just, it was literally the best of times, and it was, a great. Wayne was great to work for and to be around those kind of horses, and to think about taking that step and going on your own and not really knowing what you're going to have. And like I said, when I started, I had 7 horses, none of which had won a race, which was great for me because I had a lot of conditions left. But, to leave the organization that Wayne had and the depth of talent that he had, and try, going out on your own, I wasn't sure that I was going to make it. I wasn't sure how it was going to work, but I just felt like for me, it was time to give it a try. And, it's one of those things, if you don't make that move, you kind of, as assistant, I think a lot of times you expect, hopefully someone's going to call you and say, hey, I got 30 really nice horses I want you to train.
Yeah.
But, in reality, it seldomly works that way. And you just gotta go out there. And, one of the great things about the horse industry is everyone gets an opportunity, and if you go out there and you train some horses on your own, you're gonna pick some up, and if you can produce results, then you're gonna get a chance. So that was pretty much it. But it was intimidating. It was something that I thought a lot about and talked to my family a lot about before making the move.
And it seems to have worked out pretty well for you, Todd, if you don't mind me saying.
Like I said, we've been very fortunate. We really have.
Well, you set the single season earnings record in 05, then you break it the next year, and that was also the year that you broke one of Lukas's records, another Lukas record, that you broke with the overall amount of stakes wins that you had, like 93, I believe, something the very next year. When you're breaking Wayne's records, did he ever call you?
Yeah, we still call each other after, big races, and congratulate each other, and I think one of Wayne's legacies, in addition to being, in my opinion, the greatest horse trainer of all time, is that he's also produced some assistants that have gone on and done very well. So he really contributed to the industry in so many different ways.
Then you go from that big personality that is Wayne Lukas, that is a salesman and a showman as well as a great trainer, and you mentioned Henry Marino in there, and also Charlie Whittingham, who's that ex-Marine tough guy that I always enjoyed interviewing. But I got to tell you, I was always a little bit intimidated by Charlie, back in the 80s there when I first met him with Ferdinand's, actually when I first crossed paths with him, and then later on Sunday Silence, and knew him a little better by that time.
Yeah, he was a very different personality than Wayne, but he was also a very, very genuine man, and I really, really enjoyed the brief time that I worked for him. And I remember, it actually worked out because I was going to the University of Arizona, that I actually got school credits for grooming for him for the summer. So I had to, because of that, I had to send him some stuff to sign and this and that, which, you kind of are scared to ask a guy like that to have to do that. But to tell you, to give you an idea of how nice of a man he was, when I finished my summer with him, I sent him a thank you letter just saying how much I appreciated everything and how much, I learned and what have you. And so I sent that to him. And at the Breeders' Cup that November, I went to Churchill, and, I said, I'm going to go by and see Mr. Whittingham at the barn. And he probably won't even remember who I am, but I'll go by and say hi to him. And literally, when I got within eye range of him, he walked over to me, and the first thing he said was, "I really appreciate you sending me that letter. That was really nice of you." And it just stuck with me, like what a man that literally had accomplished everything in this industry, and a legendary horse trainer, and it's just so kind to even think about that.
Yeah. He had a great wit too, didn't he? A very dry wit. I remember I'm up there with Ferdinand. Remember, he trained Ferdinand like before dawn. You
Right.
you couldn't even see him out there, and I remember standing over there, and several reporters were there and all. And I said, "Mr. Whittingham, I can't even see your horse out there." He said, "It doesn't matter. I can."
No, he had a great sense of humor, but he was. He was prided himself on being the first guy on the track. And I remember the summer that I worked for him, I came by the afternoon before I started to introduce myself. So when I was leaving, I said, "What time should I be here tomorrow?" And he said, "Early." And so I said, "Okay." I'm thinking to myself, I'll be there at 4:15, and I got there at 4:15, and he was already there. So it's like that was one of the things. As a groom, you knew that when the gate opened at 5:30, your horse needed to be ready to walk onto the track.
What time do you get to the track now?
I'm usually a 4:30 guy.
Yeah.
That's sort of our target date, our target time this time of the year. Every once in a while, the late fall or winter months when you're in New York, you can not come in quite as early. But once you get into that routine of sort of starting at that time, it's kind of hard to get out of.
2007, a horse named Rags to Riches became the first filly since 1905 to win the Belmont Stakes, trained by Todd Pletcher. Big win, obviously, for you at that time. And then I'm going to come back to the old Charlie Whittingham joke that I think he told everybody, not just me, that he's on a plane and the guy says, what do you do? And he said, "I'm a horse trainer." He said, "You ever won the Kentucky Derby?" At that time he hadn't, pre-Ferdinand. He said, "No, I haven't won the Derby." And the guy says, "You're no horse trainer." I think Charlie told that about it. He probably told that after he won with Ferdinand probably 100 times or more.
I'll bet.
But, when you win with Super Saver and you win that Derby, even though like you already had Rags to Riches, you already had success, you'd set records and broken records. But I remember I always hated to ask you when I'd come up on the NBC shows. And it seemed like they always wanted me to come up and ask you about when you're going to win the Derby. And you were always so nice about it to me. I think one year I even said, "Hey, what are you up to today?" as we were walking over, if you remember. Because, what are you supposed to say? Yeah, it
was definitely something that was, that was wearing on me. And at the same time, you feel so fortunate to have qualified that many horses to get to the Derby. And the one thing that I always enjoyed was how important it was to the owners and how much, they enjoyed being a part of the Derby. But at the same time, it's more fun when you win, for sure. And so I think at the time Super Saver won, I think we had started 24 horses in the Derby, and in a lot of those cases there were 4 or 5 in 1 year. So it wasn't like we'd gone 24 years without winning the Derby, but the numbers were piling up, and so it was as the Rags to Riches win in the Belmont, I think, was the most exciting race for me still to this date.
Mm-hmm.
And the Super Saver win was almost more of a relief. And you hate to say that about winning the Derby, that it wasn't maybe it wasn't quite as emotional to me as it should have been, because I felt like I needed to get that done. And so now to be fortunate enough to come back with another one, that I think it's just in some ways I enjoyed the second one even more.
I was going to say, because I got to interview you right after that with Always Dreaming. You remember that? And we were out there at Churchill Downs, and I thought that was probably, I saw the emotion. I think that I understand exactly what you're saying, because Super Saver would be a relief, and then to do it again, now you've done it again. And with Always Dreaming, I thought that was a real special moment for you.
It really was. And, I think the one thing that when you get emotional in races like that, a lot of it stems from the people around you and their reaction to it. And, I remember when Always Dreaming won, and my mom was crying, and it really those are the moments that really hit you.
This guy's so cool that one year at Saratoga, I don't know if you remember this. We're going to do an interview, and as oft happens in TV, we didn't do the interview right as we were supposed to. So you started saddling the horse, and I kind of and you gave me the nod. It was okay to continue the interview. Remember that? They threw it to me.
I do.
And I said, Todd,
I can't remember what race it was, but I do remember that.
I can't remember. I wish I should remember the race. But anyway, I do the interview with Todd, and Todd's putting the saddle on, and they're in the truck going, wow, that's amazing. That you were so cool, and you're giving great answers, and you're doing that. I'm still amazed by that.
Yeah, that was kind of cool.
I bet you couldn't do it before the Derby. I bet if I come in the Derby, you'd smack me in the head.
Might have to run you over then.
Yeah, that. But I'm going to ask you about Saratoga. I know you're busy. I know you're up there. You've had great success at Saratoga. 5 in a row at one time. You were the leading trainer. You're always in the hunt. If you're not the leading trainer, you're right there. What is it about Saratoga, Todd, that makes it just so special for not just trainers to be there, but for racing fans to come to that great place? I believe, as the great Red Smith wrote, you drive, 3 hours north from New York City, and you make a left on Union Avenue and go back 100 years in time.
It's I think that's exactly what it is. It's the tradition, and that's the one thing that concerns me a little bit when we stretch this meet out. When I came to work for Wayne in 1989, it was a 24-day meet, so it was You were here during the month of August, and it was just every day had just a special feel about it, and the atmosphere was fun and intense, and just every day there was a real high quality stake race, and it was so my concern over stretching it out now over 8 weeks and 40 days is I just hope that it never loses that real special feeling that it has. But it's the preservation that they've done with the barn areas and the you kind of in some ways feel like you're going back in time a bit when you come here.
Yeah, and the picnic atmosphere for the families, it's great, like you say. But yeah, I kind of was curious about that. I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that's one thing they'll look at. When you had that short period of time, you could go up there. Now, is it so unique? Do you want to go up there? Oh, well, I don't know. I can wait and go later in the year now, or go earlier in the year. I hope it works out, because it's one of my 3 favorite tracks. I love going to Saratoga.
No question. It's the quality of racing is still the very best, and every maiden 2-year-old race is potentially another Breeders' Cup or Triple Crown type horse. So it's the quality is still there.
And you know that well. I imagine you've got a few 2-year-olds that people are going to be looking at.
I hope so. That's what keeps trainers going every year, is to have those 2-year-olds to look forward to.
I'm going to go back quick. I'm going to let you go, but I want to go back quickly to, you mentioned earlier about, just getting to the Derby, how important that is. And really you look back, and of course Lukas had that great string. You've had that string. Baffert's had that string. Very few guys, even great trainers out there, even guys that have gone to the Hall of Fame. It says something to me just to get in there. It's like a good basketball coach that, maybe they don't win it all the time, but they're going to be in that final 16 or that Elite 8. They're still in the game, and it's something that maybe people take for granted, because the guys like you and Baffert and Lukas kind of make it look easy for everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of that I think is sort of, the programs that we build, the type of horses that we're looking to buy, at the yearling sales and at the 2-year-old sales, and also is sort of what, the kind of races that our clients are trying to win. So, I think most cases you're only as good as the athlete you're training, but, I think our program seems to work well for that. And, a lot of our success has been with 3-year-olds, not only, through some of the Triple Crown races, but particularly the prep races leading up to them. And, those are some huge races as well, with great purses, and the kind of races that create some stallion potential. And really at the end of the day, that's what most of our clients are hoping to produce, or horses in the retiring to stud, and that's kind of what keeps the income generated to bring in another crop.
Todd, man, I can't thank you enough for your time. And I just want everybody to know, here's the kind of guy Todd Pletcher is. I remember I'm doing this disabled jockeys benefit, and I told you the story when I was getting ready to put him in the Hall of Fame prematurely, even though we all know he's a lock to be in it. But they told me, I said, Todd's going to be here. I think it was like Tuesday at Derby week. I said, Todd's not going to be here. He's got all these horses coming in the Derby. He's going to drive to Lexington at Keeneland and do this. He's going to be up in the crack of dawn. And I look out there, and there you are. And you continue to do that and show up and support disabled jockeys, among other charities that you do, in addition to getting up before everybody else's alarm goes off. So thank you for that.
No, it's my pleasure. And, that's a very important event. And this, as we all know, it's a dangerous game, and we got to take care of our athletes and horses and jockeys alike.
Todd, thanks for being on. I hope you come back someday.
It's my pleasure, Kenny. I'd love to.
All right. Thank you so much. Great
Thank
trainer,
you.
Todd Pletcher, here on the Horse Racing Show. Stay with us. More to come. Welcome back to the Horse Racing Show. I love to have people on that are good friends and people I've known for a long time, and they've done so well in the horse business and so much for the horse business, and this certainly is one of them. Terry Finley, president and CEO of Point Thoroughbreds. When it all began for him in 1991, he had one claimer and one client, and now he is the largest thoroughbred partnership group owner in the whole world, over 500 clients. I'm not sure the number of horses. We'll find out in a minute. And I think he's also the toughest guy in all of horse racing, a retired Army Ranger captain and a graduate, of course, of the U.S. Military Academy, hence the name West Point Thoroughbreds. And Terry joins me now from Saratoga, New York. Terry, my friend, thank you for being on.
Good to talk to you, Kenny. Really is.
So I guess the question many people ask of you, how do you go from being a West Point graduate, an Army Ranger, to having a horse group that's the biggest in the world right now with over 500 clients and growing?
I'll break that down a couple ways, Kenny. One is I've always loved horses. And as you know, if you want to survive and do any bit of good in this business, you've got to love horses. That's your start. And then you put that in with a lot of passion, not a little bit of passion, and then help, people who support you and, believe in you, even when you were at a stage in your company's existence where they really didn't have a reason to support you. And you put all those things together, and we're in the greatest country on earth, the United States of America, and magic happens. So I'm very blessed, and I know it's a little bit of a cliche, but it is, man. It's just a great ride, and this business is so unbelievable, and I really owe just about everything I have in my professional life to the horses and the people in the horse racing business.
When you started out, was there a time when maybe some of your West Point friends said, "What are you, nuts? You're going into horse racing? That's a dicey proposition, Terry. No matter how smart you are or how hard you work, there's been some really talented, smart guys that belly it up in the horse business." Did you ever have any doubt at all, or ever have friends that say, maybe you ought to back off that?
Funny you say that, Kenny. I was at my 5-year reunion at school. I was on 1991. And we're at a table, and that's exactly what one guy in particular, who's a great friend of mine, was and is now, Tony Guzzi. And he said, "What are you doing going in the horse racing business?" And actually, Tony had just got accepted into the MBA program up at Harvard. And I said, "Listen, not everybody can get into Harvard in the B school up there." And we all kind of chuckled. And now Tony is the CEO of a publicly traded company, a company called MCOR. And he keeps telling me he's going to get in the horse business. So I tell him I've been hearing that for 30 years. But yeah, that did happen. But, it's interesting. And we talked a little bit about it. That's the beautiful thing about the military academy is you look at the people that you went to school with, and they're all over the world, and a lot of them are doing really, really great things. And I'm really proud to call all the guys and girls classmates and friends.
including one of your classmates who I think was the top of the class, one Mike Pompeo, our Secretary of State.
Mike was a star from day one, and it's pretty darn hard, to be the number one guy of a West. Well, it's hard to be number one in anything, right? But when you throw in the military obligation and the physical fitness issues and all that, to still be able to beat and to be at the top of the heap amongst a bunch of alpha dogs, that said something. And of course, now 35 years later, he's all over the world as a Secretary of State. And I dare say doing a great job, but I'm biased.
Well, as you should be. And maybe a future investor in West Point Thoroughbreds. Just throwing it out there.
After Derby win, I invited him to the Preakness. And I think he had to go to China the day before. I'm talking about right after we won the Derby in 2017. He was the head of the CIA, so he couldn't come. But I'm sure, I don't know. I guess there have been some rumors about him, with a vision of 2024. So I don't know. Maybe I might be the ambassador to Ireland. I might get all the Coolmore boys a tax break or something, Kenny.
Always thinking ahead. That's why Terry Finley, the president and CEO of West Point Thoroughbreds, has put together the largest partnership group of thoroughbred ownership anywhere in the world. And, always dreaming, of course. You had interest in that horse. It won the Derby in 2017. Along those lines, obviously that's a huge moment. Was there a moment and a horse, Terry, that kind of jumped out that you feel maybe helped turn it around for West Point Thoroughbreds when you were still building your clientele?
There were a couple of them. Kenny, I remember in 2007, we had a really good year. We had not won a Grade 1. We had been in the business a long, since 91, and really in earnest. 97 is when we started to get a little bit of of our mojo. And so in 2007, we had a couple horses that in the span of like 50 days, we went from not having won a Grade 1 to 5 Grade 1s.
Yeah, I remember.
And so it was just kind of a magical time. So, Dream Rush, who turned out to be a really, really good broodmare, and another colt by the name of Flashy Bull, who was our first Grade 1 winner. So, it is about the horses, but I'm remiss if I don't bring up the partners, because, you think about it. Think about how impactful the partnership, the model has been in the last, 15 years. I really don't even like to think about where we would be if, Cott Campbell hadn't invented or created the partnership model in the late 60s. And he never wavered, he never wavered, and he just kept pushing forward. And I understand when you read about, and he talked about, he would come to Saratoga and they would kind of look at him sideways, all the blue, quote unquote, all the blue bloods. And I'm sure it wasn't easy, because no one likes to be in the position where they think they're being looked down upon, but Cott stuck to it. And I can't say enough about Cott and his wife Ann, and all that they did. Look at all the partnerships and all the people who are enjoying the sport as owners as a direct result of Cott Campbell. So I'll give him kudos.
Yeah, we mentioned the late Cott Campbell, and he did. He took a bold move with this syndication. Wayne Lukas was on our show a couple of weeks ago, Terry, and he said that's been the biggest change he thinks in the last 30 years of horse racing is syndication. You don't have the Eugene Klein anymore necessarily, or the Bob and Beverly Lewis, the individual owner, or the individual farms that come up and have great winning streaks, or certainly like in the 30s, 40s, 50s, dominating at times. That syndication has been the biggest change in horse racing. And I would say, and you certainly are a huge part of that movement, I kind of agree with him. Now it's very rare to see a single owner of a great horse out there. Or, a single owner of even some claiming horses out there. You just don't see that very much.
No, that's true, Kenny. Well, so two asides. One is I just finished the book by Wayne Lukas, really, really good. Sermon on the Mount is the name of the book.
He's like Moses, isn't he? Yes.
Yeah. And I tell you what, I just, usually you get those books and he signed it. I don't know. I think we were at Gulfstream. But I'm not kidding. You got to read that. I'll send you a copy. I bought a bunch of copies for our clients. I just was enthralled because it's an easy read, take about an hour and a half to get through. And also, ironically, I was at the Spring Street Deli about 2 hours ago.
Uh-huh.
I looked up, I was looking for a breakfast sandwich, and you're not going to believe what breakfast sandwich I got. I got the D. Wayne Lucas egg sandwich. So for me to be on your podcast and for you to bring up Wayne Lucas, very ironic.
Hey, what is the Wayne Lucas sandwich?
Oh, there's a lot of stuff in there.
I can imagine. I was going to say it couldn't be just plain egg with Lucas' name on it.
Oh, come on now. Come on. He, not at all. You got some tomatoes and other stuff. But, yeah, so I will tell you one of the things, because I know even today I hear people, they just, grudgingly are accepting them. But think about this. Even people who are very wealthy, they like to be in a position where they can tell their friends at the golf club, yes, I made money. Mm-hmm. And the partnership model has evolved in large part due to Saul Kuhlman, in the sense that you can get a good horse. We all know how hard they are to come by. You can get a good horse now, and we can take some money off the table, and we don't have to be in a position where we give up control or we have to sell the horse entirely. So, the liquidity in our business now is, I think, very, very good and very, very productive, because I don't care who you are, if you have a shot to take some money off the table and to show a profit, that's a positive. So I don't think people talk about that a whole lot, but it's very good.
Now, as president and CEO of West Point Thoroughbreds, I come to Terry Finley and say, I got X number of dollars. Is there a minimum that you have to get into West Point Thoroughbreds? Or, I imagine you have a range of clients from a little money to a lot of money that invest in you.
Yes, absolutely. So it's about 10,000. It's about 10,000 would be the minimum, but sometimes it's a little bit less, and then other times, this in March at OBS we bought a $2 million horse. We didn't take the whole piece of the colt. Nice Tappet colt out of a Grade 1 winning mare and a New York bred. So I hope we can win the New York bred other than at some point in the future with him. But but it spans the globe in terms of investment, but people really don't care in the sense that once they're in and they get into the West Point family and others, there are a lot of really good partnerships out there, a lot more today than at any time I can remember. And with the right outlook, it doesn't matter if you spend $500,000 or $20,000. That's part of that's your horse, and that's your team and your franchise. And it's the only sport in the world that gives people a chance to really get involved and to take an ownership stake. And, I'd like to think as an industry, we've taken advantage of that, but there's still a long way to go. We have a lot of upside as we expose our business to more people and show them you can get on the other side of the velvet rope in our business without having to mortgage the future and your kids and your whole lifestyle.
How many horses do you have right now, roughly, Terry?
We have our head count is 92 horses, Kenny.
It's a long way from that one claimer, isn't it?
It is, but it really has been a labor of love. We as we tell people, like we're not. If you're looking, to price shop, we're not it, because what we build in, like, first and foremost, probably about 10 years ago, we all got together and said, what do we need to do to protect the horses after they they're finished with their careers. And one of the things that we're really probably the most proud of is we in essence have a 401k fund, right, for our horses. So I'd like to think that when they drop the hammer at the auction and they know that we bought them, they have a big smile on their face because they're going to carry the black and gold.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, they're assured that they're going to have a good life and they're going to live out their days in comfort. We're going to do our best to try to get them into a new career, riding, eventing or whatever. But, and look, I think that we were part of it, but the industry about 10 years ago really, really started on a path to do a better job. And we have. We should be very proud of what we've done on the retirement side. But there's still more to do. And one of the big things, obviously, that's helped us is the fact that our full crop has gone from 36 or 37,000 all the way down to about 20. Yeah. So there's been an inherent advantage in there just in that 10 years on that side of the equation. But we do a better job. And I know, we could talk for a couple hours about the situation on the West Coast, but once you're in this business, you realize, right, there's nobody that lasts in this business without an enduring love and, the intention to care for our horses. Like that's a given. Now, we got some issues to clear up and to work on, and we got some things with our culture to change, but that passion to take care of our horses is totally prevalent in our business.
Well, it's always been that way with you. When I first met you, which was sometime in the 90s, you hadn't been in the business long. Remember when we first met?
Yeah, I do.
And, so we go back, good gracious, almost as long as you've been in this business. When I was doing some stuff with ESPN is when I first met you, I believe. And, I've watched your career and really, and I've always, what I've always admired about Terry Finley, and not because he's on this show right now, but that you talked about taking care of the horses after they're racing. And I think the fact is it's been that integrity that you have brought. Obviously, I think a lot of it, that U.S. Military Academy background that you've brought to West Point Thoroughbreds that grows the business from one investor to over 500 in 20-some years.
It's magic, right? And it's I'd like to think we were at the right place at the right time, and just as the partnership model took off. But in our business, one of the other things I talk to people, this is all we do. We don't pinhook horses. We don't breed, aside from one or two a year. And so I think that's, if anything, I've learned, if you really want to be at the top of the heap, you got to take dead aim on what your objective is. And, that objective has to be a singular objective and not, two or three different things. And now that's just for me. And I know other organizations and other people do a good job. I like to tell people, look, when you have me and you have our team, we're thinking about your horses and your investment, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we've got nothing else. And I think that's been a really significant part of our growth and the increase in the size of our company is, because this is what we live, eat, and sleep. And I quite frankly wouldn't want it any other way.
Well, and to show you what kind of guy Terry Finley is, by the way, my father, during the Korean War, actually taught cadets. It sent him to school for this. He taught cadets how to fuel in combat, so you wouldn't get dirt in the tank, or you wouldn't, in a Jeep or whatever was out there in the field. And he taught in the summer at Camp Buckner, which is just outside of the military academy, if you've ever been in the West Point area. And so we stayed at the Thayer Inn, and Terry helped set me up, and we had a little private tour the day before, and then went on more, and my dad was showing me all the places, and we went to Camp Buckner, where he used to write love letters to my mother, my dad Reginald, and that was just so cool. And if you have a chance to go to West Point sometime, just go. The history, along with the beauty, I don't think there's any campus like it, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I remember that, and I do remember, and you just try to, if you have the resources in life and you have the ability, like your dad's still, he's still with us. He's 90 years old. You said he's incredible, and he just is an inspiration to people all around him. So, that's what I tell the younger people, especially in our business. If you have a chance to do something special, do it, right? Because you never know, and you got to pay things forward. And I know plenty of people did good things and really nice things for me early in my life. And, I think we're both of the age where you really start to grasp it. Instead of just turning inward, you got to turn outward. You got to help. You got to, the world needs people to make things happen and to do good things. And I'd like to think that every day I'm trying to be one of those people, and as we all are,
Well, you certainly continue to do it in the horse racing business, and if people want to get in touch with you, it's pretty easy to do. Go to the West Point Thoroughbreds website, and you can get in touch with Terry Finley personally. I mean, that's pretty much sums it up, doesn't it, Terry? You want to buy a horse, you want to get interested, they can actually talk to you. They don't have to go through the chain of command, no pun intended with the military background, by the way.
They could talk to this old retired captain, and it was funny. It was ironic, Kenny. I had a guy who served in the Vietnam War. He worked at the Blood Horse, and it was probably back in like '93. And he said, "Hey, I just came out of a meeting, and I brought your name up. They got a new thing called the World Wide Web and a website, and I don't know anything about it, but you might want to talk to the lady who just took over the job." And anyway, so interestingly, we had the first websites in the whole business, and we used to fax in our updates for our horses. I think we had 6 or 8 horses at that time, but just look at the website and the impact of the online aspect of the horse racing business. It's really, really cool to think that's an area again that I think we have a lot of upside with overall in our industry. And look, this game, I know we've taken a lot of arrows, especially in the last 6 months, but you feel the electricity and the energy at Saratoga and Del Mar, and you realize, man, this is a special, special business overall.
And a special guy is Terry Finley, President and CEO of West Point Thoroughbreds. My friend, thanks for being on, and come back. Come back and visit anytime.
I definitely will. I know you're talking to Todd Pletcher, who I'm a huge fan of, and keep up the great work, and congratulations on your podcast, Kenny. Well done.
All right, Terry. We'll talk again soon. Terry Finley, President and CEO of West Point Thoroughbreds. More coming up here on the Horse Racing Show. Welcome back into the Horse Racing Show. Soundtracks available. I don't know. Maybe they are. Is that your music, Scott?
No, it's if you look at the credits, we use a lot of independent music loops and give them all credit and whatnot.
That's not Steven Seagal on guitar, is it?
No, not that one.
Okay.
Yeah, we're still looking for that one.
Okay. I was just wondering. I like to check on that.
That's right.
Todd Pletcher was a hot walker. We talked about him being a hot walker. You probably heard that. Horse racing people will know. I think most of them know what walking hots is. Hot walker. It's pretty much an entry-level position at the racetrack. Very little money. Much like working on this show. I consider all you guys hot walkers.
Hey, thanks.
You're welcome.
You're pretty hot yourself there, Kenny.
Thank you. But Thomas has the definition of a hot walker.
Yeah, I mean, basically it's, like you said, it's an entry-level position at a racetrack where after a horse, trains and, is really, excited and pumped up, really literally hot. Mm-hmm. The hot walker's job is to walk around with that horse and just basically give them time to cool down, let their heart rate and pulse just kind of, steadily drop down. Mm-hmm. Well, not too fast. You don't want to, the horse just went through a workout. You don't want to rush him, but
just gradually get him cooled down.
Exactly.
He's hot, you want him to get cool. Give him some water, walk him around sometimes 20 minutes or so, keep him loose. You don't want any pulled muscles after all this. And
That's the main thing, is avoiding any injuries.
yeah, that's basically hot walking. Sometimes they'll say walking hots, which is what they do after every show here. I get up and walk all around the studio. Thomas has come up with his human chess game earlier. Ben Chafin's jumped in and remembers a human chess game from a movie.
Yeah, that's The Toy, starring Richard Pryor.
Jackie Gleason is the co-star in that.
That's right.
Yeah.
It was a little gem. All those, I liked a lot of those movies back then. Pryor was doing. They're pretty funny. Brewster's Million. That's one of your favorites.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites. That and all the Wilder ones, pretty much. Stir Crazy, especially. I like that the best of the Wilder pairings. Okay. Anything else we need to talk about today? Anything else on anybody's mind? Tim, have you had a good time sitting in with us?
Oh, yeah. I always enjoy coming to Lexington. LA's, as you know, Kenny, a different world.
Yes.
But, coming back, you get sort of the real cool, just sort of basics of life that you love when you're in a place like Kentucky and Lexington. So I always enjoy being here.
Well, thanks for joining us. And we are going to have some more Hollywood-type folk going to be on the show. We had Michelle Phillips on. We got a couple others lined up. I don't want to mention names till they come on.
Yeah, that's right.
But they'll be on soon. So you have to watch every episode.
Right.
That's right.
Thanks again to Todd Pletcher. As we talked about, I never will forget the time I almost introduced him as the Hall of Fame trainer. He is so good, so quick, so young in his career still, that he's not qualified to be in the Hall of Fame yet because you have to have him 25 years. That's how good he is. And Terry Finley, from Army Ranger now to the top syndicator of thoroughbreds. Thanks, guys, for being on. Thank you especially for tuning in today and for liking and subscribing and loving us and sending us kisses and little emoji hugs and, all that stuff on YouTube and Google Play and iTunes, Facebook, at Twitter, at Horse Racing Show. Anything else I left out?
You're a real fan of emojis, aren't you, Kenny?
Yeah. I'm a big fan of emojis. You want to get the official Horse Racing Show emoji? Ben and Thomas and Scott will be working on it soon. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again next week here on the Horse Racing Show.